Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather. Thank you so much for stopping by today. Today we're going to be doing the end of the year survey. And this is the first video of 2021, so I'm super excited. And we're going to talk about some books. Some of these books might overlap with my top books of 2020 video that you'll see after this video, but I wanted to get this one up first. So I'm super excited about it, and I hope you enjoy. So let's jump into this. The first question is, how many books did you read this year? I ended up reading 147 books, which almost doubled my goal because my goal for the year was 75 books. And I read over 43,000 pages, which I'm happy about. And my average rating over the year was a 4-star, which obviously tells you that I liked a lot of the books that I read, which most of the books I read were, which is the third question. But most of the books that I did read this year were romance, because romance is obviously my favorite genre. And it was a lot of contemporary fiction as well. So that was the first 3 questions that I just kind of mushed all together. Number 4, the longest and shortest book you read this year. The longest book I read this year, which I still don't understand why it's 497 pages, is 2 by 2 by Nicholas Sparks. This wasn't one of my favorite books because I felt like it was too long and it just dragged on and on and on, and I did not think that it was marketed correctly because it's marketed as a romance, but I believe that it is more of a literary fiction book, but that's just my opinion. It's a sweet father-daughter like story, but wasn't my favorite. The shortest book that I ended up reading is a prologue to this series that Ivy Oakes is working on, and it's called The Story of How We Met. And it's 61 pages long. It's a really cute YA love story about second chance romance. It's really cute. In the first book in the series I have on my Kindle, and I plan on reading it. It's about one of the kids from the actual prologue story that she came out with. The next one is my favorite book published in 2020, and that has to be All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. This is a memoir, well, not a memoir, autobiography about George M. Johnson's life and about how he came to be who he is today, and it's just fabulous. I loved every minute of it. I absolutely loved this book. If you haven't read it yet, you really need to. It is great. I read the audiobook as well. I read the audiobook first, and then I reread it just on its own this year, and it's great. George M. Johnson is a fabulous person. Very big advocate for the LGBTQ plus community, and he's just great. This book is about his life and how he became who he is, and about him being accepted by his family, him being accepted by his fraternity brothers, him just coming out as the person he is and becoming who he is today. And quite frankly, he's a fabulous human. So loved every minute of this book. If you haven't read it yet, I would highly recommend it. Favorite debut published. This was technically a debut as well, but I wanted to throw in another book, and it's called The Hollow Gods by A.J. Verana, and this is a horror / paranormal romance fantasy. It's just all these things wrapped up into one. It is marketed as a horror because it does have very dark elements to it. It is about Kai and Maya. Kai has a secret. I don't want to spoil it. And Maya is just a very lost girl who ends up saving a girl that's crawling out of the woods, half dead basically. And the town that they're in of Black Hollow, or is it Dark Hollow? It's either Black Hollow or Dark Hollow. I think it's Black Hollow. Maybe Dark Hollow. Anyways, the town has a curse that's attached to it, and girls end up going missing. And then they end up finding them dead and mutilated. So It's very dark. It's very action packed. Kai and Maya's romance is again dark, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I figured out this year that I really like curse stories. Curse stories are top notch. I really did like it. And the second book comes out this year, and I'm super excited. Alright, favorite book not published in 2020 but read in 2020. And that is Freshwater by Akwaeke MZ. And this book is fabulous. It's about a person named Ada and dark spirits, I should say, that live within this person, and just about them growing up and about people thinking that they have mental illness when in reality it is dark spirits that the Igbo tribe or the Igbo people believe in. And it comes along with, I believe, Nigeria. Are they Nigerian? Yes, they are Nigerian. Akwaeke MZ is also a part of the Igbo tribe, or the Igbo people, and it's considered an autobiographical novel. So I really enjoy this book. It is very dark. It has a lot of trigger warnings. It is inspiring. It's sad. It's just all these different emotions wrapped up into one book, and it is fabulous. So you should really read it if you were looking for something like that. Pick it up if you haven't already. I'm sure you probably have heard of that book because it's great, and a lot of people did end up reading it this year. I have 2 books. Next. The next question is a book that lived up to the hype. My first book that I want to talk about is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin, and this is more of a science fiction-y book than it is fantasy, but it is fantasy. This is so hard to describe, like, the marketing wise, but just know that it is about New York City coming to life, and the different suburbs of New York City have to fight together. They're avatars, and they have to fight together because this evil force is trying to take over the city as its own, and it is a wild ride. Now, I tried to read this book on its own, but I couldn't get into it, so I decided to try the audiobook, and the audiobook is fabulous. It is, the narrator just does a fantastic job of narrating the story with all the different accents and with all the different sound effects. There's a lot of sound effects going on in this book, and it's a wild ride. It's great. I'm sure you've heard of it. If you haven't picked it up, I highly would recommend it. I highly recommend the audiobook because the audiobook is great, and just this cover itself, it's my vibe. It's my vibe. Loved it. I love that book. The next book that I have on the list for living up to the hype is The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. Now, I had a love-hate relationship with this story. I thought the story itself was the storytelling was great. I didn't necessarily like the writing, and I first rated it on the writing itself. But as I continue to think about it over and over and over again, because this is a story that sticks with you, I ended up rating it higher about 2 weeks later. And I really did like this book. It is a story about a curse coming after these 4 men who disrespected nature in a way that an elk woman comes back after them and takes revenge on them. And it's fast-paced and it's slow. Fast-paced and slow. And I think that's one thing that kind of threw me off because the pacing was a little off. And like I said, the writing felt kind of sporadic, but thinking back to it, the storytelling in this book was just top-notch. The horror aspect of this book was top-notch. The curse aspect to it was top-notch. It was a top-notch book. And I enjoyed it. I really did enjoy it. I liked it a lot. And I would recommend it to you. It's really good. And I'm sure again, you've heard people talk about this book because it's really, really good. Okay. The 9th question is a book that did not live up to the hype. This is a book that people either love or hate, and me specifically, I did not really like it. It's The Silent Patient. I usually will eat up a story that is about murder, but I did not like this. I didn't like this one at all. I figured out the ending pretty quick on in the book, and I figured out who the killer was, and I figured out the twists and the turns, and didn't like the ending at all. It's a psychological thriller about a murder, about a woman who murders her husband, and then we follow her through therapy with her therapist, and that's all I'm going to say about it. Number 10, a book that felt like the biggest accomplishment after finishing it. Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I did not like this book either. I enjoy the show more than I enjoyed this book. It is about a dystopian world where the government has taken over and we have handmaids. Handmaids are women who are chosen to have babies for the community. They are placed in families of higher society, or of higher stance in the society, status in the society, and they give birth to the babies, and then their babies get taken away from them and given to the family. And I read the audiobook because I tried to read the actual book. This book is very dry, it's very slow, it's very depressing. But going into it, I already knew all those things, but it felt like an accomplishment because it took me forever to get through it. And again, I enjoy the series, or the TV series, more than I enjoy the actual book itself. We'll get through that one very quickly. The next is favorite character you read about this year. And that is Tegan from The Girl Who Can Move, or The Girl Who Can Move with Her Mind by Jackson Ford. I loved Tegan. She is very witty, she's very sarcastic, she's just all in all the time. She is quirky. I really enjoyed her. I want to be her friend. It's a really good book. She has telekinesis, and she works for a secret agency for the government, and it's a good time. It's action packed, super quick to get through, and she made me laugh so much. And my ankles are going to sleep because I'm sitting on the floor. Oh god. But if you haven't read that book, you need to. It's funny. Least favorite character of the year, that would be Mr. Jacob Strain, which I shouldn't even say Mr. because I don't consider him a man, because he doesn't deserve that title. He is her teacher. No, that's not her name. He is Vanessa's teacher, and he has a relationship with her, and it's very gross, and he is just a terrible human. He's manipulative. Makes me angry. Like, I'm getting angry right now just thinking about him, but just know that he's got everything he deserved. Moving on. Most shocking experience while reading the book in 2020. That's Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Morano Garcia. I didn't expect to like this book as much as I did. I'm just going to say this. I will never look at mushrooms the same. If you haven't read it, you need to figure that out. But I will never look at mushrooms the same. It was just a very surprising experience because I liked it. I guess I should hold the book. Because I liked it for one, and two, just like the twists and turns I wasn't expecting. So, I didn't read any reviews going into this book. And I think that's why I was so shocked with some of the things that happened, because I didn't want to know anything going into it. And I did read the audiobook for this, or listen to the audiobook. Alright, the next ones. The biggest opt or couple you read about this year, like your favorite. That would be Danny and Zaph. Power couple. Everything you ever want in a romance. Yes. Chloe and Red. Cute. Very, very cute. He's a brooding character. She's sweet and witty and smart and doesn't take any crap. And they just go together so well. Graham and Zoe. Graham is a butthole. Zoe is quirky and awkward, and I related to her a lot, and I love them as characters, like as a couple together. Arthur and Cheska from the Lord of London Town. They are the perfect Persephone and Hades couple ever. If you like dark romance, you should really check out Lord of London Town by Tilly Cole. It was good and dark. If you don't like dark romance, don't check it out. But if you love dark romance, I would highly recommend that. Moving on. The next question, number 16, number 15. Best book written this year that you read. I loved this book, Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. I love books that are written in verse. The author that got me into reading books that are written in verse is Ellen Hopkins, but this is about two sisters that don't know that each other exists until after their father dies in a plane crash, and it's about their coming together story, about them accepting each other, loving each other, about them finding each other, about them grieving with each other, and they have two very separate lives, and they were both really close with their father, and this book is just so pretty. I loved it. I really, really enjoyed this book a lot. The book that you pushed the most people to read. First one is The Hollow Gods by A.J. Verona. Pushed everybody to read that book. Still want everybody to read that book because it's fabulous. The next one I push everybody to read is The Woman in the Dark by Vanessa Savage. This is a great psychological romance that you will not see the ending coming. And I do need to preface that this book has a trigger warning for suicide. So before you go into it, know that. But it is so, so, so good. You need to read it if you haven't already. I'm not going to tell you anything else about it, but just know it's a really good psychological thriller that you need to read if you haven't. It came out a while ago, like I think it was 2018, but it's so good. You need to read it. Favorite cover of the year in 2020 was The Down Days by Zell Hugo. I didn't particularly love the book because I ended up giving it 3 stars, but this cover is just everything you need in your life. It's a really, really good cover. I love all the colors, the hyena, loved it. Okay, favorite book to movie adaptation of the year. I didn't really watch any. I did mention The Handmaid's Tale, but I haven't watched that show in a while. If anything, it's the Bridgerton series that just came out on Netflix that I'm really excited about because I just started reading Julia Quinn, and it sounds like it's really good, and I've heard nothing but great things about it. But other than that, I haven't really watched a lot of TV because we watch a lot of Charles's shows, and then I read while he watches his little shows. Which book made me laugh the most? The Girl Who Can Move with Her Mind. I laughed a lot in this. Like a lot in this. I also laughed. So I laughed a lot in this because Tegan is hilarious. And then I laughed in every single book that I read from this series, The Tourist Attraction. It's the Moose Spring series by Sarah Morgenthaler. And I loved, like I said, I already said I loved those books, but I laughed a lot in those books. Okay, let's see. I'm getting lost because I just put a bunch of letters all over this. The book that made you cry the most. My Dark Vanessa was really, really sad. Oh, by the way, it is a really sad book too. I did cry in this. It was more tears of anger than anything, but I did cry in this. And also this made me cry because it's just really sad, and it has a lot of hope in it, and it has a lot of grief that these two go through, and it made me think of my dad and my relationship with him. It's an emotional read, but it's worth it. Okay, so favorite new authors I discovered this year. 1, A.J. Verana. 2, Sarah Morgenthaler. 3, Awake Enzi. 4, my love, George M. Johnson. I also really enjoyed Sajani Patel and Elizabeth Acevedo. So I discovered a lot of authors this year, and I really enjoyed those. Okay, so now getting to some books that my guilty pleasures. I finished the Power of Hades series in a day and a half. So guilty pleasure right here. These are Hades and Persephone retelling by Liza Rain and Rose Wilson. I really enjoyed these books. I also always include Tilly Cole in my guilty pleasures because she is an auto read for me. Love her books. I read Thoroughly Whipped by her this year, which was really funny. It was a really, really funny book, and I should have included that in the books that made me laugh the most, but it's a fun read. It's very lighthearted, sort of. It's lighthearted, and her main character is freaking funny. And then the next guilty pleasure I read by her, I've already mentioned previously, and that's Lord of London Town. I ate that book up. And there are some things from different series, or from another series that she read that I wasn't expecting it to be in there, and I died and went to heaven and then came back for you. Okay, the next is the favorite reread of the year, and I was in a really big reading slump starting in March. Was it March? March or April, something like that. And I ended up reading the Twin Estates series by Stella Fatami. And anytime I'm in a reading rut, I keep these books around, and Tilly Cole books and Brittany C. Cherry books. I keep these books around to reread, so I will get out of a reading slump. But I ended up reading this series again, and it was really good. I loved all the books. The last book, not my fave, but I still enjoyed it. Okay, and then the last book, or not the book, the last question is, were you happy with your reading year this year? I am so happy with my reading year this year. For one, I almost doubled what I was supposed to read. 2, I found so many new authors and realized my reading taste finally, because I've been trying to read I've always read a lot of genres, and I've always read from many, many different authors of different backgrounds. But I felt like this year I finally found my favorite type of thriller, which is serial killer thrillers or horror books that have a paranormal aspect to them, or romance that has a paranormal aspect. I also found out that I like historical romance, so I found out that I like a lot of different genres this year, and I'm super happy about it. And I read a lot of fantasy this year as well, and I normally don't do that, and I actually enjoyed it, which is weird because I usually don't like just regular old science fiction, but I read a lot of science fiction novels, fantasy novels, in that genre that I really enjoyed. So I'm happy with everything, and I'm really excited about a lot of the new releases that are coming out this year by some of the authors that I discovered this year, or last year. But anyways, super excited about it. Yes, I enjoyed a lot of the books that I read this year, or this past year. Let me know down below what your favorite book of the 2020 disaster year was, and make sure you hit the subscribe button, like this video, share it, comment down below, and I'll see you in my next video, which is my favorite books of 2020. Deuces.